So what about if there will be questions from Facebook and other places? Can you read it? Can you see the Facebook? So in case people will be asking questions, so that you'll be able to read it and ask those questions too.
Yes, I think my Facebook is connected. I'm going to share the video to the group, and there are some who will come in to participate and pose their questions.
Okay.
I think it's important that they have access to.
All right. So you will, when the Facebook is on, we'll let you know. That I will introduce you, then you can now start, and then you will introduce the whole idea.
All right, okay. We do it as a form of interview.
Yes, sir.
You were my guest, all right, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
You people will let us know when the Facebook is on. We are on YouTube now, but we are not yet on Facebook.
Okay.
So once the Facebook is on, then we'll let you know. Is it okay? Is it showing, or you have to correct something?
That's great.
Yeah. I'll make it very better. Okay. Just don't cut him off. So that it could be better seen. You check or something. So that. Why are we not on Facebook yet? Is it not taking time? Okay. All right. Let's try and welcome everybody that is going to join us. We're going to welcome everyone. Let me see if we have people on Facebook that are joining us. I know we already have people on YouTube, so we'll go on Facebook now. It's going to be a very interesting conversation today. I'm having with Honorable Innocent Magaji. Innocent Magaji is a self-proclaimed atheist or agnostic that is, but who is not indifferent to the truth, who is very interested in the truth, and who wants himself and his friends to come to the awareness of the truth and to challenge me and find out, why should I choose Christianity? Why should I even choose to believe in Christianity, being an African? So he has a lot of questions. We already started to discuss with him personally, but what I've understood from Vincent is that he's not the only one. From Innocent, sorry, is that Innocent is not the only one who has similar questions as an atheist and as agnostic, that Christianity is outdated. And somebody also informed me that a lot of children and a lot of pastors' children now in Nigeria are refusing Christianity and are rejecting Christianity. And they are rejecting Christianity because of the way the so-called fathers have practiced Christianity in Nigeria. So as a result of that now, many people are becoming atheists. So the question is, I would like to introduce to you people Innocent Magaji, but he has a whole group of people, a whole group of agnostics and atheists who are on his platform and on his group, Facebook group. Those people too have similar questions that they will all be asking me. So, but I will allow him to be the host today. So Innocent is going to be the host of this program. And anybody that has any comment or questions or contribution, I'm sure Innocent will be glad for you people to participate and write your contributions or comments or questions write them on the comment section on the YouTube or Facebook. And Mr. Innocent Magaji, over to you. You are in charge for the next 1 hour, 1.5 hours.
Thank you so much. And good evening to everyone that is listening to us and those that are watching online, those that will still watch in the future times. This conversation is really, really important to me because I've been battling with Christianity. I grew up in a Christian family, and I lost my faith. And I discovered that recently the numbers of people who are coming up to embrace this atheism and agnosticism is increasing day by day. So Dr. Sunday Adelaja is my mentor, and I consider him my mentor because I admire him a lot because of the in-depth of what he has in his mind. And I've been following his teaching since 2016 I guess, yes, till today. So I've been really inspired with his teachings. And he's not just the regular Nigerian pastor that you know. He's more of that. He teaches things that are more practical. He doesn't just, like the regular Nigerian pastor that you know, and all the pastors everywhere, they seek to deliver, to bring salvation to your soul. But Dr. Sunday Adelaja doesn't just save your soul. He saved both your soul and your body. And that's what attracted me to him in the first place. So I became very interested. We engaged in so many conversations, and I read some of his book, and I've been following all his teachings, and I get to see that he's totally different, and he's introducing a unique version of Christianity. So being that I love the truth, and with the atheist organization, the community that we have, I noticed that we are not just people that are interested in dogmas or doctrines or just with a rigid mindset. We are open to fact. We are open to reality. We don't just dismiss the existence of a God. We need proof. That's what it is. So I noticed that this community is full of intelligent individuals who have studied a lot, and then they understand this concept of Christianity. And most of them were actually Christians. We have Muslims among us. And now, what is it about atheism, agnosticism in Africa currently? We have different aspects. We have different group of people that are already together with us. There are some who claim to be animists. There are some who claim to be humanists. There are some who claim to be atheists. There are some who claim to be agnostics. And all these people together, they have one common objective. The objective is to fight religion, to fight Christianity and Islam in Africa. So we all have one thing that we share in common. It's called Afrocentrism. And this Afrocentrism is to protect our culture, to protect our identity. So we have had this conversation in the past, and so many people express their view, which most of us share. So I discussed with Dr. Sunday Adelaja a few times, and I discovered that he is privy to some of the books, some of the ideology that promote Afrocentrism. So what amuses me is, why did he still stick? Why does he adhere to this Christian principles? Is what pricks my curiosity for me to call him to organize this talk today. So I hope that we can be able to learn and be able to understand, because his personal experience, he traveled and spent a lot of time in Ukraine. He has the largest church currently in Europe. So it's something really, really interesting to be able to understand the in-depth of his mind. I as I'm talking to you right now, I was nervous from the beginning. Before organizing this, I was thinking about something. It's not a form of challenge, but I wanted to understand. I was curious. I don't just know why you still subscribe to this Christian version, and why do you think it's important for other people to be able to see it? Because you said something. I was watching one of your videos in a very long time. You say something about that faith is a weapon. You say it's an asset. In one of the Nigerian transmission video you made, you say faith is a weapon, it's an asset in man's hand. So when I watch your life, through you demonstrated humility in most of your Facebook live video, the way you treat people, and most especially the first time I wrote you was on Facebook, you replied swiftly without any delay, and I was shocked. Because when I came across your video, I went on to make some research about you, and I found that there are so many incredible things about you. Then I was like, I already made a conclusion in my mind that, oh, this man is so powerful. I'm not even sure he's going to reply to my message. Let me just write him. I was actually impressed with what I saw. Then I wrote, swiftly, you replied. I was like, okay, this is it. Then I went on, We talked a few times. I saw the humility in you. I saw the people around you that are growing. And then I went on to discover that you have influenced a lot of life. You have changed family. You have saved a lot of life. You people that are addicted to drugs, to alcohol, you gave them hope in life. You were able to build this energy, to gather this respect around you, and you were able to help each other. Then I help other people. Then I said to myself, okay, this is me. I'm here criticizing Christianity because of everything that Christianity has done to Africa. My people are dying of ignorance, superstition, and all sorts of things. And here is somebody that is uniquely different, somebody that he took a different stand and is able to use Christianity to pass positive message. Then something came to my mind, and I realized that yes, this same Christianity, this same Bible, people can use it to promote negative messages. They can use it for their selfish interests. They can use it to achieve whatever. They can use it to manipulate people. They can use it to make people to kill each other. They can even use it to start a war. They can even use it to commit a genocide. We have record of some of those things in the Bible. We have record of the Amorite, the killing of the Amorite, the Canaanite, the Amalekite, the Jebusite, the Cushite, how they were being massacred by the Israelites. So this has been a point of concern to most of us atheists, agnostics, the animists, the Christian group entirely. It has been a very huge point of debate. We have been asking ourselves, why is the Bible full of violence? Why is it so? We have a God who we order, we just decide to just wake up one day and kill every male child, the firstborn. I'm talking about the children of the Egyptians, because he wants to save his people. He will harden the heart of Pharaoh. So some of us, we are past Christians. We read this book. Some who are into Islam understand how this religion operates. But here is somebody, Dr. Cindy Adelaja, using this same Christianity to promote good ideas. I'm saying it to those who don't know much things about him yet. Please, I urge you to be humble, to go on and make a lot of research before you pass any judgment, to try to understand the work and where he's coming from. As I'm talking to you right now, I'm very, very humble in my spirit, because I come to respect the person of Dr. Sunday Adelaja. He has done a lot of things through Christianity. So coming to interview you, I don't see any reason why I shouldn't support your cause. I don't see any reason why I shouldn't support your movement, because I've seen the marvelous work you have done. I've seen how you've touched life, and you make me humble personally myself. So I'm really, really impressed. So what I really want to understand is, I ask myself certain questions. I say, okay, are you going to, what is your aim? First of all, you save people, you give them hope, but is it going to be for a very long time, or is it going to be for a very short time, this Christianity? Because I noticed that you are preaching this version of Christianity. Are people going to create another new doctrine out of it, or are they going to be able to liberate their mind? Then I watched around you too, and I saw that the disciples, some of your students, some of the people around, Dr. Success, Dr. Amu, the people around, I've seen their improvement and their development. I've seen the way they question things, and I concluded to myself that you're not the type that seek to indoctrinate people or try to teach them what to think, but you teach them how to think rather. So, and I said to myself, I said that the people that will relate with you deeply, the people that you won't have any difficulties, if they come to realize who you are the atheist, because they are, for instance, our kind of ambience in Africa, where it's very superstitious. It's very difficult to find a child that will grow in that community to be able to think independently against all oppression, stereotype. When you claim that you're an atheist, for instance, we have one of our members who is called Barak Bala. He's a Muslim from the north. He was being castigated by his parents. Some of them thought he was even mad. They even took him to a psychiatric home. So you find a place where you claim to be an atheist, you present yourself, and then here you are with your family who are religious, and the people around you, they start considering you as somebody that is sick. They don't understand why an individual will start saying that you don't believe in the existence of God anymore. But these individuals did not just come to that conclusion in one night. It happens through constant research, through studies. They are frustrated with the environment. They are frustrated with their ground, with everything that is going on. So they just one day say, okay, well, let me search other alternatives. These are high people. They think fast. They think beyond their culture, they think beyond their community, they think beyond what they are taught. So I say, if all the atheist community will listen to you they will relate to you more quickly. It will be even easier for you to convince the atheist than the religious people that are currently in Nigeria, because your method of teaching is more logical, it's more practical. You teach things, you want things to be done. You do not just ask people to wait for supernatural power to come and make things happen through magic. You empower people both physically and spiritually. How do you help people psychologically? By giving them hope, by making them to understand that through a lot of people that are abandoned drugs, which is something really, really commendable that after seeing that, I was very, very humble with that. So right now, here we are discussing with this group of people, the atheists, the animists, the agnostics. Why? How do we try to understand what is their own mindset and what is the problem? What led to them becoming this? I say this because I went through the same process myself, from Christianity to Islam, from Islam to atheism, from atheism to agnosticism, where I am today. And I want to say this to those who are listening to me, that I consider atheism personally, that's my own personal view, but I know many way I do this, that most of us we don't have problem with God. The only problem we have is with the concept of God. Most of us are very much aware that there is a transcendent energy, a force, a power beyond human comprehension. We believe in science, we believe in so many things, metaphysics. But the only problem we have is the concept of God, how God is being presented. We do not want to see a God that is jealous, a God that is full of hatred, a God that is vengeful, a God that kills, a God that supports another group of people, a God that he has fans using some kind of clan. So it's the main debate today that I will say concretely is the concept of God. And I have friends that are atheists that are full of arrogance. Today, if you ask them, they'll tell you that God doesn't exist. They'll just dismiss it directly. But I consider such state of mind as being puerile, because atheism, as it is today, is childish, is puerile. I'll use this word, I will say is an immature state of agnosticism. Because those who graduate from the level of atheism to become agnostics are very, very difficult to be convinced. Because first of all, they went through that gradual process of debating this concept of God in their mind. They go through turbulent process. They say, no, God doesn't exist, okay. And then they realize that, okay, they're actually fighting the concept of a God, not actually God himself. Right now, they will tell you that they don't deny that there is a supernatural power. They will tell you that they don't deny that there is a force that is controlling this earth. They will tell you that, of course, human beings can be able to, like I'm talking to you currently, you are in Ukraine, I'm in France here, but we can still communicate because somebody had the intelligence to gather elements, matter, combine them together to be able to foster an energy that could be able to permit us to communicate now. So if you call it witchcraft, they won't understand it. But if you employ the word science, it's very easy for them to understand it. If somebody is performing magic on the stage today, doing something, if you say it's magic, they will start arguing with you. But if you try to explain the scientific process that involves an individual fixing an element from different angle to different angle to create energy, to generate electricity, to generate calls from coming people from different continents, they will understand you once you start using scientific language. So the general debate today is actually the concept of God, this Christian concept of God, with us promoting Afrocentrism. For instance, in the question that I've generated, there are 15 questions, and 5 questions each touch different aspects, which I believe you very much you're in a position to answer this, because the first aspect is the spiritual aspect of God, the concept of God. And then the second aspect is the cultural aspect of Christianity, how it affects African, how it's related to the African culture. And then the third aspect is the economic aspect. Because most of us think that religion only solves spiritual problem. It only solves spiritual problem. It doesn't solve economic problem. It doesn't have anything. Culturally, it comes to there's this huge cultural decadence we see now in Africa. So all atheists, all agnostics, all animists, this is one of the key points. This is their main fear in mind. Spiritual aspect, cultural aspect, and economic aspect. If you propose an idea to them, they want to know how does this benefit them. They ask you questions. They will teach you about history of slavery. They teach you about how Christians are going around to burn shrines in Africa. Meanwhile, the very shrine that they're trying to burn, some of the artifacts that are found in that shrine, you come to Europe, you see them here in museums, well preserved. properly preserved, and people are coming from China to come and watch, to come and pay. They will come to the African Museum, like the one I saw in Paris. You will see all African artifacts. The same thing that we call juju in Africa, that people are afraid, that people venerate so much. When you come to Europe, you see them preserve it preciously in glasses with proper lighting. They keep good chemicals. They will ask you not to even use camera to snap some of them because it will damage them. So, but why is it that outsiders, foreigners, appreciate this African culture, this African art? They appreciate it a lot, but we Africans, we don't appreciate it. So the few people that are able to come out of this myopic mindset, which are the group of people that refer to as atheists now, they come to realize is a fast mind. It brings up a lot of questions. So they come to say, okay, all right, now this is it. We have to protect our culture. We have to protect our identity, our languages. And then we'll say, okay, now that Christianity is coming to destroy our art, so many Christians are going to burn shrines. What do we do? For instance, your name is Sunday now. You accept Christianity. You're a Yoruba person. There is even an example that they said that a Frenchman doesn't accept Chinese name. A Frenchman will never be called by a Chinese name. They will never accept it because they understand the psychological impact it has on them. And a Chinese man will never be called by a French name. By a French name, a Chinese man cannot say, "Je m'appelle Nicolas Sarkozy" or "Je m'appelle François Hollande." And a Frenchman cannot say, "Je m'appelle Xi Jinping" or function or whatever they can, because they understand the psychological effect behind. As trivial as it is, just changing of name, adopting a foreign name, as trivial as it is. If we heard of somebody called Catherine, you might think a Catherine is a European or an American, but you don't know that this Catherine is very much an African. And when you hear about Muhammad, you might think this Muhammad must come from the Middle East. He's certainly an Arab, but you won't know that this Muhammad is actually an African, a black African. But because this individual accepted Christianity, they accepted Islam, they decided to adopt some of these foreign names that has cultural effect. It has a psychological effect. Psychologically, it affects them. There's a cultural cut-up between the mind. It makes you, it seems banal, it seems trivial, it seems very, very much less important, but there is a psychological. Like me currently, I decided I have a daughter. I say I want to name her an African name, or give her an African name, and I said, hey, be proud of it. If someone called you with this name, you tell them that this is a meaning. And because she was giving birth in the hospital close by here, and the doctor looked at me, she said, hey, Innocent, yeah, you give birth to your daughter in France. Why can't you just give her a name? She said, give her some kind of French name. I said, why? She said, yeah, it's a very cool name. She said, what name would you like to give it to her? I said, well, I don't know. I'll ask her mother. What name will you give her? Her mother is a South African. So what name will you give to her? She said, well, I will give her Tiseso. Tiseso, which actually means perseverance. I said, all right. Well, me, I will find a Yoruba name and give her. I said, I will give her name Ayomi. I will call her Ayomi by the name. So this thing, when it comes to names, it comes to culture, art, poetry, philosophy, poems. The atheist organization, association, group, those who subscribe to this ideology are trying to protect this identity that they think that Christianity is coming to destroy. They are saying within themselves that yes, we need to protect our ideas, we need to protect our culture, because these people are coming to give us, they are replacing our names, they are replacing our language. I'm speaking to you currently in English. So there is that fear of cultural annihilation, which they don't understand, first of all. And then the first aspect which I would like you to address is the spiritual aspect, which is you read the Bible, you don't see anything about God. You don't see, the Bible doesn't tell you where he lives, where he comes from. You only see his nature. You see him in different action. You see he's describing, first of all, the Bible starts with the creation of the world. So there are questions behind that. Who is God? And does God have a beginning? Does he have a beginning? And why do we need him in the first place? Why do we need him or her? So there's that question of gender when it comes to God. Is he a man or a woman? Is he black or is he white? So to the African atheists, that is something very, very important for them, because if you tell them that God is white, okay, they have a problem with that. They will start telling you, all right, okay, we know what the white man can do. We know how they enslaved some of our people. We know how they still continue to plunder African resources. So if you tell them that God is white, how is he? Does he have a gender? Does he have a race? How does he look like? It's something that is really, really curious. Does he have a human form? What does he look like? How does he behave? How does he talk? What does he communicate? So these are some of the curiosity. These are some of the things that start boiling up in our mind. We come to this and we say, okay, well, we read the Bible and try to find the answer to it. When we don't see the answer in the Bible, we don't see the answer in the Quran, we don't see the next thing, we just say, well, we think there's something wrong somewhere with the concept of God. And why does he choose, first of all, to present himself through literature, through human literature? You know about the history of Christianity, how the Bible was compiled, how it was canonized by Emperor Constantine, and different stages that the Bible went through, different modification, the evolution of the Bible, the transliteration of the Bible. So coming to understand the history of how this book came to exist is something that is really, really challenging. So this atheist group, they come up with these questions in their mind, which I would like you to address first of all, the spiritual aspect, and then we'll go to the cultural aspect, and then the economic aspect. Who is God? Does he have a beginning? Why do we need him or her? And is heaven a real location where God resides, or just an inner realm of consciousness? And then what gender and what race do you ascribe to this very God? So these are the first 5 questions. I don't know, okay, where do we start this?
The way I would like us to go is, you have 3 categories, right?
Yes.
3 categories, 5 questions each. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So let's start by asking those questions one by one. So we start with the spiritual category. You ask one question until we answer all the 5 questions, then we'll go to the other ones.
All right, okay. I would like you to take most of your time to address this because it's very important for them. So the first
question one by one. Yeah.
Okay. The first question is, who is God?
Okay. Yes. That's the first question. That's it.
Yes.
No gender here. Gender will come later and all that, right?
Yes. Okay. This is 5 questions. Who is God?
Who is God?
The first one is God. Who is God? Yes.
God is spirit, which takes us out of the limitations of man. Man is a matter, but God is not a matter, which makes man unqualified and incapable of defining God. Because God is spirit and man is not qualified and is not matured enough. The maturity of God, of man, the intellect of man, has not taken him to the 4th dimension. In physics, we only have 3 dimensions, 1st and 2nd dimension. That's where men operate. But for us to locate God, we have to go to beyond the 3rd dimension. We've got to go to the 4th dimension, where is spirit realm. Now, the fact that the man cannot put spirit into the laboratory and confine spirit, that doesn't mean that spirit is non-existent. It is just like saying right now that an ant, if I find an ant or an insect, and an insect is seeing me approaching it, and that insect or ant is trying to determine from his own parameter and from his own dimension how to define me as a human. An ant cannot define a human. It doesn't have the parameter. It's not on the same level. It's just like saying I cannot be using the same parameter that I use to define or to identify product, physical product, that I will use the same parameter to identify and to define bacteria. Because bacteria are too small. I mean, they are too little for physical. They are not optical. Optical eyes cannot determine them. So, and because man is so limited to his senses, to his 5 senses, and to the things he can see either through physical eyes or through other optical instruments, we are so limited. We are too limited to even begin to know what is happening in the spirit realm. So a man that is only reliant on his 5 senses and on physical and material reality to determine existence and to pass a mark and assessment to all reality, he has failed before he began. That is why I agree with you that when somebody is a pure atheist, it is easier to defeat him in the argument or debate than agnostics, because an agnostic is trying to come out of being cornered. Because, for example, if an atheist will say, everything came out from the theory of the Big Bang, it will mean that that atheist or anybody who believes in the theory of evolution and Big Bang has contradicted the very basis of physics through which the Big Bang theory itself was discovered. It is physics that gave us the ability to discover the Big Bang theory. And that same physics tells us that everything comes to regression and, entropy. Everything comes to, is disjointed, and everything comes to destruction, natural destruction. Everything disintegrates. Everything comes from order to disorder. That is physics. That is how life moves. Everything will eventually come to disorder from order. So, but things don't come automatically without external forces and external influence from disorder to order. If you go to your room right now and your room is unpacked and scattered, things are scattered, and you come back in the evening and everything is, the bed is made up, the clothes are ironed, everything is hanged, it means there is an external influence. So when it comes to man, for man to function, element, the eyes, why is our eyes not on the top of our head? There is a logic behind it. There's somebody logical that have put it down together. Why is it that our mouth is not under our soul, the sole of our feet? It's because there is an intelligence right there. Why is it our nose is not at the back of our spine? There is an intelligent design, and not just for man, but for every creature. So since we cannot say, just like you cannot come to your room that is disorderly, nothing, this is science, nothing comes to, order from disorder. Rather, if you will leave everything in the perfect order and you leave it without any external force and external control, it will eventually come to disorder. Because, that is the natural sense of things. That is why entropy is a reality. Things get bad. Things get destroyed. So what is that external force? That external force is the force of God. And that is why that external force that is going to maintain and maintain creation and even create has to be more intelligent than the thing is creating. It's just like this iPad right now that I have. This iPad, somebody that created this iPad has to be more intelligent than the iPad itself. Because that person has to be able to think of the iPad, be able to gather it together, form it. So just the same thing like an artist. An artist who draws a picture has to first of all conceive that picture. So that artist has to belong to another dimension, to another level of reality than the picture that you have just painted. Just like the same, the dimension of the metal and iPad is this first dimension, second dimension. But the man that created it has to be in the higher dimension, which is a third dimension. So this iPad or this book that I've written or this tissue paper that is here cannot begin to discern me right now. So what is even the concept of life? If we have life, it means that the person who gave us life has something more than life, something superior to life. That's why he is able to create life. If anybody is able, if man exists, and we know that it has to be a higher intelligence that create man, it means that the person that made man to be man has to come from a higher dimension to be able to assemble man. Just like somebody who created this has to be higher to be able to assemble it. Somebody that wrote this book has to know something to be able to pack it together. You have to belong to a new dimension. That is the question of who is God. God is spirit. And God, because God is spirit, he cannot be dragged to the laboratory. And he cannot be accessed by an ant of a man, because he doesn't even belong to the same category and the same dimension as him.
Okay, that leads us to the next question. Actually, you landed just right in the next question, because according to the logic you just gave, and during the HMT, the last HMT, the January HMT program, which just finished some weeks ago, you showed a video of the universe, of the galaxy system. You show the Milky Way, different galaxy, and a lot of things that try to explain. So this thing is leading to the next question. It explains the intelligence, the complexity, the nature, the magnitude, which human beings come to admit, whether religious or irreligious. It comes to explain that there is certainly a transcendent energy beyond the human comprehension, which you just described now, which we totally agree with you. So, creating a human being, like you said, eyes not being in the toe or in the middle of the head, because there is a logic behind, there's an intelligence, there's a design. And now when you bring out the human body, an autopsy, a human body, you put it on the table, you will see that there are thousands of muscles in the flesh of the human body. There are thousands of muscles that connect to the bone. And then you also ask yourself, why does a woman get attracted to a man? What is the need for that connection? What is behind these forces? What is behind this intelligence? Why is it? Certainly, they can't come from evolution.
I just listened to an atheist yesterday who became, as an atheist medical scientist, not a medical doctor, but medical scientist. He does researches in the area of medicine. And he said, I became a believer only because of anatomy. He said, because when a human body is opened up, the order at which everything functions together, the thousands of elements, and everything functioning in perfect order, there must be somebody that knows all that arrangement. And that's how he became a believer.
Wow.
Anatomy made him a believer.
Yes. So leading to that, yes, the human anatomy, it's incredible. The way the brain functions, the way certain animals. There is this example of a plant where you take this plant. We were talking recently about a French philosopher, they call him Michel Onfray, a very young man. He was talking about a certain plant of how you will take this plant. The plant actually has time in it. The plant will close in the evening. It will close its leaves. But when it's daytime, the leaves open. So what they did was that they took this plant and put it in total obscurity, in a huge total darkness in a cave where there wouldn't be any access to any light at all. But this plant was able to close when it's night and open when it's daytime, even without getting to know that is there any light or there's no any reflection of the sun. So watching the nature, watching the mountains, the force of the ocean, the power, the strength, the earthquakes we experience, certainly there must be an external force from all these things, and the human anatomy too, that explains the complexity of the nature of the creator of all these things. So in your opinion, why do you think that such huge personality, such magnificent, such omniscient, such omnipotent personality, how do you come to the conclusion that his personality could be summarized in a little tiny book called the Bible, within the clannish movement, a group of people, just tiny, let's say at the epoch where, let's say we have at least, let's say 5 billion people, 4 billion people during their epoch when they were having this, they were the Africans. He didn't see the African to use them to make profit among the Africans. He didn't see the Europeans, he didn't see the Asians, they were the Chinese people. They had a very great civilization that existed in a very long time. So how could you subscribe to this little tiny literature, just a book? How do you explain that this very book can explain the nature of this magnificent energy that is beyond human comprehension, this energy that created the human body, that created the galaxy? How can you explain that this book, the Bible, can explain its nature?
All right. Now, when we talk about galaxy and the earth and the complexity of creation that proves to us that there is an intelligent creation behind all this, you will see that man is so minute in creation process itself and in the complexity of creation itself that man is only but a tiny dot because let's take one galaxy for example. Any little galaxy, and our galaxy, Milky Way, is one of the smallest. But let's talk about any galaxy. Any galaxy you take is about 500 million times bigger than the planet Earth. Galaxy, the Earth. So if a galaxy is 500 million times bigger than the Earth itself, so that is less than a dot. That is less than a sand, a grain of sand. And if that is the case, then you want to ask yourself, then how many galaxies are there? There are more than 500 billion galaxies. So when we are talking about God, and God, this huge God, talking about huge God, we are not even talking, man is not even the most complex of his creation. It's the easiest of his creation. Man, let's take one galaxy that is, we are not even talking about the Earth, where man has not even been able to explore the whole Earth. We have not even explored 10% of the Earth. In fact, man has not even been able to exploit 10% of man himself. More than that, man has not even been able to exploit any part of the body of man. Man has not been able to exploit even the eye. Let's say you find a medical doctor that says he's a medical doctor or optician of eye clinic, eye science. If you say he's a doctor, medical doctor, it is a wrong expression. You cannot be a medical doctor. You can only be a specialist in one little area. And when you say you are a doctor of science, PhD in eye treatment, you have to ask what part of it. Then if you say what part of it, then you have to ask what part of that one part. Then that is all the doctorate, PhD that we get. Let's say somebody comes to you and says that I am a PhD or professor of mathematics. It's not possible. You cannot be a professor of mathematics. Nobody can be. The whole world, nobody can be. You can only be a professor of maybe algebra. Maybe this one, this one. Even if you say algebra, we have to say, okay, from algebra, which one in that algebra? What department? What faculty? What? So what I'm saying is that even the eye alone, if we close down all universities in the world and tell them just to study the eye, they are still not going to be able to solve all the problem of the eye, so that nobody will be blind, so that nobody will ever use glasses, so that every complexity will never be resolved. All universities in the world, they are not even able to resolve the problem of eye alone, or brain, or digestive system, or any part of the body you mentioned. We are just talking about body. So that kind of man that is so weak, that is so helpless, but to even help himself, let even that man stop the question of death now. Let him solve the littlest question of when he's going to die or when he's going to be born. So man is so non-entity when we are talking about God. He decided that, okay, I'm not even challenging the man to go and solve the problem of moon or sun or any star or the galaxy. I'm not even talking about the galaxy. I'm not even challenging man to go and when you finish studying one galaxy, then we can begin to discuss the one who made the galaxy. It is pride. It is pride that makes man to begin to think that he even qualifies to ask questions about God. Because when we say that the smallest galaxy is 500 million times bigger than the Earth itself, and that there are 500 billion galaxies that are much more complex. So what is Earth that we cannot even explore? We have not even explored 1% of the Earth. Talk less of ourselves. You've not even discovered yourself. Why are you running to? Okay, right now, some people want to go to Mars. Okay, can we get to Mars? The biggest optical, invention of whatever, the mechanism that NASA has installed and discovered to get to the Mars. For you to send somebody to the Mars, you have to, we are still struggling with it. Up to that, we can still not decide just to go. We are not even talking about sun. We can get to die. We are so finite. We are so limited. That is because we belong to another category. Now, so the question about God is, how can then we say this small book called the Bible will describe God? Of course, it cannot describe God. The God man is the littlest and the weakest of all God's creation, but the only thing, magic word that God gave to make man special, even though it's the simplest, but is the most unique, is that God puts his nature, his spirit, just little spirit in man, little. God himself is the whole spirit that is controlling all those 500 billion galaxies. It's everywhere. But in man, when a man dies, it is less than 1 kilogram. In fact, it's 6 grams. Only 6 grams of our life, the life of a man that lives with a man died, is only 6 grams of breath. The life of a man is just like 6 grams. It weighs less than this thing. This one. It weighs less than. We are so non-entity. It is that little 6 grams that God put in man that makes us to be different and to be able to even think. It is that little gram that makes man to become Homo sapiens. Because it is only when the breath of God, that breath, that is the 6 grams, when it met with the shape of man and the body of man, when the spirit of God met, man became a thinking man. So that faculty of the man to think is what the limited little thing that is needed for him to manage the earth and to rule over the earth is what is deposited in him. Just is only the little that is needed for him to survive and manage the earth and be Lord over all the creation on the earth is what is given to him. So also with the Bible, God only put little as necessary for man to function in relationship with God, only to the concept of the earth, for him to be able to relate with God and manage the earth. That is the only little information that is contained in the Bible about for man about God. The Bible is too small to reveal God. The much that is there is the much we need to function on the earth, and the much we need to know about him. That is just like saying you will not give your son now, for example, $100 billion and he's only 1 year old. He doesn't need that, even though you have that money, but you are giving him just a glass of this, a glass of that. He doesn't even need the $10. It would, if you give him more than that, it will destroy him. So when to say that, how can that little book describe God? No, that book doesn't represent God. It only gives us a little understanding of God, the little for our good that is enough, good enough for us, that the most we need to know to function on the earth and to relate with God. That's it. And to relate with all creation. And then why is it that it is not the African man that God put or used? Because everything, if you follow the order of creation, everything is done with everything starts with a prototype. God had the whole earth on earth in mind when he was choosing, when he wanted to relate to man. He wanted to relate to the whole earth and to all nations, all colors. But he needed a model. Just like we all do. Before this iPad was created, one original copy, one model needed to be created. When you buy a Mercedes-Benz, the reason why you have Mercedes-Benz is because there was a model, a prototype of that Mercedes-Benz that has been tested, test run. That's why we now have all the Mercedes-Benzes that you have. That is how life is. Something has to be started with something. That is why God started with the Jewish people, and there is a reason for it. Okay, you are saying, why is it that God didn't use the Africans or the white people or
Asians, the Chinese?
Asians, Chinese. There are a lot of reasons and a lot of complexity. For example, let's take the Chinese. The Chinese people, up till like 2,000 years ago, they were busy killing themselves. Go and read history of the Chinese people. They were busy fighting, infighting. Now, people who are one tribe against the other, they just kept on fighting all their lives. So people who are busy killing themselves like that, there is no way for them to be able to settle down to carry, you know, the image of God or the likeness of God or the model, the prototype of God. Now, even these Jewish people will say, why is it that they are the one that were chosen? No, there was another civilization, which was the Persian civilization. The Jewish people were chosen from Ur, from Mesopotamia, what do you call it? You know, there is the Mesopotamia, what do you call it? So from the Persian civilization. So they came out from the Persian civilization. That is where God instructed Abraham to leave the Persian civilization. And from one man who is a Persian, God created the Jewish people. Yeah, Mesopotamia,
Mesopotamia.
Yeah, Mesopotamia. So that is where he got him from. So he's not just like Jewish people. No, Jewish people is a new people compared to the Chinese people, compared to, you know, the other, you know, like the Persian people from that Mesopotamia, for example. So he's just one person. Now, if God has chosen a black person, the same question will have arisen. Why that black person? If it had been a white person, why that white person? But I think God chose between the two. We're not neither white nor black. It's just yellow in between the two. But then God also gave explanation. It's like God knew that this question was going to arise. And so God gave explanation as to why Abraham was the one that was chosen. And he said the reason is because this Abraham, I saw a quality in him, which is he has the ability to pass down. He will teach his next generation the principles of the knowledge of God that I gave to him. So because I can trust him to pass down the knowledge of God, because that knowledge of God was needed, despite all the crisis and the trouble they going to pass through, it was needed for them to keep it and pass it across. Why was it needed? Because they were only the prototype. They were supposed to keep that knowledge of God for us. They had to go through a lot of suffering in learning to walk with God and the ways of God, to become a model for us, all other nations and other countries, so that by studying the original, the prototype and the model and the modus operandi of God with man, so that all nations also now could observe that and also copy and learn without paying the price of years and the price of punishment and suffering that the Jewish people had to go through to be able to be that model people and model nation that, you know, that portrays God's relationship to man to the rest of the world. So it is actually a liability and a responsibility rather than a privilege. But with that responsibility comes some certain privileges, which is a blessing, the blessings of Abraham.
It's really interesting the word you use. You say the Bible is very literal. It is very literal, the knowledge of God, just portion of it. That is a very strong word, and I admire. I just feel wow, when you use that word. I was waiting to hear about that. And this narrative of a privilege, of a model of the Jews, it's actually bemused me, and I'm wondering, why does God have to go through such hectic way to reveal himself to humanity? Why does he have to take all this long process of people to kill some group of people? Why do they have to suffer? Why do they have to go through so many laws and cross the Red Sea and go through the Egypt and teaching all those things? Because here we are. Currently, in my place, I have a group of people, they call them the thief people, who they are currently being massacred in Benue State by the Fulanis in Nigeria, in the middle belt of Nigeria. I have friends that are there, and I grew up among these people, and I know they have a very strong culture, a warlike culture. They are warriors, most of them. They stopped Ottoman Danford when he took his jihad in Africa. They stopped him. So these people are being massacred currently, and they have a folklore, a traditional folklore, that an oral tradition that they pass through to their children, from children to children. They said, according to them, that they were coming from the east, which is practically Egypt, but they didn't mention that they were coming from the east because there was war that was coming from the East that were coming, and they were killing a lot of people. So the ancestors decided to move to the West. As they were moving, they reached to a place where there was a huge river, which is the current River Benue. They couldn't cross the river, so a talisman among them decided to perform some magic, and all of a sudden there was a green snake that appeared, and the green snake now became a bridge that they used to cross River Benue to the other side of the city, which they settle currently in Nigeria, and there. So this folklore is really interesting. They transmit these stories from children to children, and the children believe these certain things. They believe that it was real. They believe that it happened actually historically. There's no need to doubt it. How did they cross River Benue to become where they are currently? And then there's another man again, I don't know, Jacob, I think also in the Bible, who woke up somehow one day, probably found himself, and the children saw that their father had a broken leg. He has a knee that is broken. He had a fracture on his leg, probably, and he wasn't walking straight forward. When they asked him, he told them that he fought with God, that he wrestled with an angel, and that was why he was blessed. So this narrative, this folklore, this tradition, these stories is something we see replicated in every tradition, in every group of people, in every clan, among different kinds of people. They have their narrative about God. They have their narrative about life. They have their own. So the salient question here is why will he? Because if you know the history of how Christianity came to become universal religion. It was a clannish religion. It was a clannish tradition, a clannish culture. It was a clannish religion, a superstition for a specific group of people, until the Roman Empire took it as a huge campaign on them, until it was enforced on the people in the kingdom by a pagan emperor who claimed that he saw the cross of Jesus Christ when he was fighting the battle. So if it weren't for him, I'm still wondering what would have been the future of Christianity. Would have Christianity spread in such a vast way? So Emperor Constantine now picked this little Jewish folklore because the Roman Empire then was a polytheist society. So he forced them, because there were a little group of people that were practicing Christianity, and Christianity was growing in a very large force. So now they pick Christianity, they enforce it in the kingdom, and now with the coming of the European, they found out that, okay, he introduced this religion to the rest of the European, the Frankia, which is currently the France, and to the rest of the people. Now they see that this religion is actually charming. They see the narrative in it. Now they picked it up, they refined it, they translated it from Hebrew to Greek language, the Latin, I think. Then now, until recently, how it was translated to English language, which they use actually to take out this campaign to dominate the rest of the world, which they brought this religion to Africa 500 years ago. To Africa, when I say Black Africa, I mean Black Africa, because to the best of my knowledge, the Christianity was actually an old version that was already in existence in Ethiopia already. So they brought this to Black Africans, this refined version of Christianity. They refined it, they polished it a certain way. The collection of the books are being selected to be able to be. So in this aspect, we discovered that there were certain books that were actually missing in the Bible. Currently, there is a debate. They are asking questions about the books that are missing in the Bible. That the Bible, through the Nicene Council that they did, they collected the works of literature, testimonies of people to combine to form the specific Bible to bring us. So they promoted this religion through the campaign through Emperor Constantine. Now, so I'm still wondering if Emperor Constantine, if he wasn't here to be able to take this campaign further, what would have happened, and why does God have to go through this tedious work of making people commit huge genocide? Because some of the stories that are in the Bible are absolutely absurd, particularly most of the stories because of the genocide that they committed. And for instance, the story of Elijah killing 42 children because they mocked him that he had a bald head. So we see stories of a group of people, of a little clannish people, and to the extent that the religion was be able to be, somebody took this religion, universalize it, and that's what we have today. So this question, this little literature, why do you still adhere to it? Why do you think it's more plausible than the thousands of religions?
Very, very good. You know, that thing you are talking to me right now, you are telling me the understanding, the philosophy of an Africa-centric philosophers, these new Negro, African, black philosophers who are trying to rationalize why, you know, Africans must go back to their own God, that they have their own God and their own faith, and that, you know, Christianity is a religion of colonization and it's a religion of oppression, and they're the ones who brought slavery, and Christianity was killing, I mean, the Bible, there are killings in the Bible and all that. It is a very myopic, simplistic understanding of, you know, what we call dilettante. You know, people who are not professional, amateurs. It's a very amateuric approach to understanding the Bible and the God of the Bible. Now, let me now give you a wider concept of the Bible and the God of the Bible and the God of the Jews. Now, when you talk about the thief people or Efik people or Yoruba people or Igbo people, every nation, every nationality, every tribe is got their own understanding of God and how God helped them, how they came across. For example, in Yoruba land, for example, the Yorubas believe that life on earth started in Ife. And that, you know, they have a whole theory, or Oduduwa brought some piece of land, I mean, or that, you know, or God came from heaven, all kind of, you know, things they have that they are more like what do you call it, folklores, like stories, like, you know, yeah, just legends. So, but why should God go through that pain of revealing himself through the Jewish people? First of all, if we are to go by the account of the Bible, God existed before the Jewish people. And God related with man before the Jewish people. The Jewish people and God's choice of the Jewish people was an attempt by God to restore the general understanding and relationship that was already there but was lost. It is because man lost relationship with God, and when man went his own way, and all nations went their own way, including the descendants of the Jews. Everybody went astray. That is the same thing, the same story you are telling right now about the thief, is it thief and the any other ethnic group, is the same kind of story that the descendants of the Jewish people were also telling. They also used to believe, everybody have their own unique stories, but stories like that also, they were just like that. So the Jewish people were never, you know, they didn't come up with an idea of this God, and they too were paganistic. What you just described now was paganism or polytheism. That's what the Europeans and modern scientists like to call paganism now. They don't want to call it paganism, but they call it polytheist. Huh? Polytheism, right? Not monotheism, but polytheism. But I call it rather the Gentiles or paganism. Everybody was a Gentile, everybody was a pagan, which means they were believing in different gods. So this whole world that we have right now was out of order. When man left the Tower of Babel and they were scattered by languages, every language went and formed a nation, and everyone had their own God and their own ways of relating to God. So it was a whole mess up system. So, for example, if God had not brought order into the whole process through Abraham, can you imagine how many nations we have on the earth? Then can you imagine how many not just nations, tribes? In Nigeria alone, we have over 250 tribes. Then many other countries have over 100 tribes. There will be thousands and thousands of different gods, millions of them. It will just be chaos. And that then will even the more distort the mind of man from getting to know where he comes from. Because if we agree that we are all man, there must be a unifying factor. Because, okay, what then makes us man? What then unites us? What then makes us to be the same? Why we say men are equal? So if everybody has his own God, then men cannot be equal. Also then we don't have the same origin. So how do we trace our origin? And if we are all men, white, black, any nationality, if we are all human, then it has to be traced to one single or singular origin. And if we believe that this is a higher intelligence that created us, so it has to be traced back to that intelligence. So that intelligence that we call God now decided to reintroduce himself to the whole earth. Now, Jewish people were practicing the same thing, just like the Africans. God is not a Jewish God. Okay. God is not a Jewish God. And this God of the Bible doesn't belong to the Jewish people. Only God had to start with somewhere, with somebody, or with a group of people. Why? Why is that necessary? Because the order of creation says that every big thing starts small. And it is only small things that become big. Things don't just start from nowhere. Everything must have an origin. Why is that important? It's because there must be process in reality. The idea is not just the idea of product or existence or matter. There must be process in matter. So because there must be process, the need for process in matter. For example, why is it that we don't just, God didn't just say, let there be trees and we have trees? No, he had to go through the process of forming the seed. And he had to go through the process of making the seed go to the soil. Why? Because of sustenance. Not just sustenance by the trees themselves to be sustained or for God to maintain it, but because of sustenance for it to be easy for the man who is living on the earth to manage the seed and the trees. How will he manage it if he will not be able to study and there will be no predictability? There must be a process to it that man should be able to predict. There must be a process to everything on the earth that functions on the earth so that man will be able to do experiments, study, and be able to see the beginning to the end of it. That is how the earth was made to function. The earth is made to function in process. And because of the need for process, God introduced time and space. God introduced three things in Genesis. And the three things God introduced to make man understand process is time, space, and matter. And those three things that are necessary, that is why everything has to start from small to big. And that is why there must be a process to everything. So the need to go and get one person to start the process of reintroduction of humanity back to the source is what we say was started with the process of Abraham being called and having to leave his own tribe as well, where they were having, you know,
they were actually practicing Zarathustraism.
Yes, but they were having different kind of gods as well. They were having, some of them were having different kind of gods. His own father was practicing the god of the moon, stars, and then the other people, the whole nation might be practicing something just like Nigeria now in Yoruba land. You might say, oh, you have Oduduwa, but somebody is practicing Ogun, Shango, the god of thunder, the god of the sun, the god of, you know, that's everywhere. So now, he also was taken from his land, and he was taken now to be reintroduced back to the source of all men. Now, Abraham was not, the God Almighty is not the God of Abraham. He is the God of all humans. But he was using Abraham as the process to reintroduce all humans back to the God of all humans. So that is a process thing. That is why the Jewish people were, actually, I will not agree to say that it is the Jewish people that were selected. That were selected to introduce God. I would rather use and apply the Quranic understanding better than the biblical understanding in this case. My own understanding of God introducing himself to man is not just connected to the Jews. The Jews is just one lane on one lineage of Abraham. But apart from the lineage of the Jews, there was the lineage of Ishmael. It was Abraham. So when you see, all the world at the time of Abraham, even up to now, were still polytheistic, were still pagan, or Gentiles, where people were worshiping different gods, many gods. But they were not they didn't know. Everybody, why were they worshiping all those different gods? Because everybody could feel in their nature that there is somebody that created them, there is a need for them to reconnect. God saw through the need of all nations, of all little groups attempting to find their source. So God decided to reach out to help them. Because some of them, in their attempts to reconnect, they call on God. Maybe God answered them. Maybe God helped them. He preserved them different ways. But then some of them will say it is the that story of the snake that you spoke. The Igbo people, there is, I think they call them Aroshuku. There is a tribe in Igbo land that also believe in similar story. They believe that it was a snake, long snake. It's called, that one is teeth is green snake, but their own is long snake. And the long snake is what preserved them and what God used to do their miracle as well. So, but all kind of different stories. Some people say it's snake. Some people say it's thunder. Some people say it's iron. Some people say it's... So God, to remove that confusion, God decided to introduce for the first time, through Abraham, a monotheistic or monotheist understanding of God. Monotheist understanding of God, which is only one God. So when we talk about God and Christian God now, I am not in a hurry to say that is the Jewish God. No, I will say the God of Abraham. As far as I'm concerned, the God of Abraham is a monotheist God. And that monotheist God is the God that came, is the God that everybody is reconnected to, that immediately reintroduced himself, not just to the Jewish people. He actually started introducing himself to the Arab people, through Ishmael, because Ishmael was born before Isaac. And actually Ishmael, the covenant, there was a covenant between God and Ishmael before there was a covenant between God and Isaac. So that way it is to be able to deliver us from accusing God of being unfair. We cannot say God is unfair and God is only choosing Jewish people, because it's not true. It shows Abraham. And Abraham became the God of the Jewish people. And Abraham became the God of Ishmael, the Arab descents, the Asians. And Abraham became the God, the source of that. So it was parallel history. So as a result, right now, there are 3 monotheist religions in the world, which is, and they are the biggest, which is also pointing to the fact that all that is proof that it is true, because the largest group of people, 2 billion Christians, 1.5 billion Muslims, and the Jews, all that put together is the biggest. That is like, almost 4 out of 7 billion in the world, almost 4 billion are belonging to people of Abraham descent. What does that mean? It means that the majority of humanity now associate themselves to connect to that same source, the God of Abraham. So I would rather say it's not a Jewish God, but it's the God of Abraham, because it is parallel. It is a parallel story of the Jewish and of the Ishmael. And even though we were not seeing what happened to Ishmael later on in the Bible, but Islam, we could say they are the continuation of that story. So I would say Abraham is a unique person that was chosen by God to return all men back to God, and not just the Jewish nation, but the Jewish nation, the Arab nation and the nations of the earth through Christ Jesus now.
All right, it is actually an interesting narrative. As you said, as you were talking, I could relate because I actually read about the story of Ishmael and how the Arabs came to believe that, according to the Quran, they believe that the Ishmael is actually, since Ishmael is the first child, they believe so much in him. And then if you read continuously to the end of how his mother was sent packing out by Sarah, by the husband, you will see that before Abraham died, he blessed them. He blessed the two children.
Yes, and that is the problem. That is the problem that Christians have today. Christians today don't believe that we believe in the God of Abraham. That we, the Christians and Muslims, believe in the same God. That's a problem. Because we actually believe in the same God. And the reason why we believe in the same God is that this same God didn't appear to Abraham different. This God didn't appear to Ishmael differently and to Isaac differently. No. In fact, God didn't appear to Ishmael or Isaac. He appeared to their father. And their father is one person. And that their father gave birth, that same God that appeared to their father gave birth to two sons. It's just like me now. I gave birth to two sons. One here on this hand and this hand. And then you say, no, this other son, I am not the one who gave birth to him. No, but God made sure that Abraham never sent Ishmael away without blessing him. And Abraham demanded from God that God should bless his son and that God should enter a covenant with his son. Even though God was saying, I'm going to choose Isaac. I'm going to choose Isaac. The reason why I choose Isaac is not because I'm choosing the Jewish people. That's the mistake Christians are making today. We think that God has chosen the Jewish people over the Arab. No. The reason why, the only reason why God chose Isaac is because God foreknew that the rest of the nations of the world, they will also need a source to be connected to Abraham. And that source has to come also from somewhere. So that source is Jesus. And God, because God knew that that source, because the Jewish nation is just one nation, the Arab nation is just one nation, but God is interested in all these other groups that you are talking about. So because of that, God had planted a seed, that a seed will come out from Isaac. That's why he said, I chose him. It's because of the importance of all nations to God. God values all nations so much that he needed to create a source, a connection to Abraham, that knows the only God. Okay, Arab already have their own connection, Ishmael. Jews have their own connection, Isaac. But this other connection will be different from the Jewish connection. Even though biologically it came from the Jewish people, is Jesus, but God put his blood in Jesus so that the Jewish people cannot claim him. It got to the extent that even the Jewish people had to reject him, because for God, the need to save all other tribes and all other groups is not just as important as the need to save the Jews. It's not just as important as the need to save the Arabs, but it's even more important. For God is a more paramount question and a more paramount challenge to save the nations of the earth. That is why he said he was now choosing Isaac, so that through Isaac all the nations of the earth will be saved. But he was actually seeing Jesus, because Jesus is that son through whom the whole earth was saved, not through Isaac, but through Jesus. So since he came through the lineage of Isaac, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, that is why God will actually endure the fact that the Jewish people have been removed from the place of priority. They've not been replaced, but they've been removed. That's why Paul was saying that it is like the Gentiles have been grafted in, and the branch that was the sole branch before, but that was before all nations were the great. Heaven was open to all nations. That was when the Jewish people were the main one and they could feel like they were in control. But once the bigger cloud all nations of the earth, 80%, 90% of the earth was coming in, God will even go to the extent of allowing the Jews, the branch of the Jews, to be temporarily, sidelined, so that the bigger nations of the earth will be grafted into Abraham's roots and into God. Because what was primary concern of God is that all nations, not just Jewish nation. But if Christians and Muslims don't understand this, and even if Jewish people don't understand it, Bible will keep on being a source of division. Bible will keep on being a source of war. Bible will keep on being a source of conflict to the rest of the world. Now, when you now started talking about Bible, killing in the Bible, and the killing all the Jebusites and the Canaanites and that is part of our history, because we come from that root. But that is not our history. It is the history of the Jewish people. But the history of us, not we Christians, but all nations of the earth, started with Jesus. It is through Jesus and through the times, and from the times of Jesus, that the nations of the earth took the center stage. And the Jewish people who were in the center stage in the Old Testament, they took the back seat. Because they would not join themselves to become one, and with the nations of the earth, God would rather have all the nations of the earth to be leading. So our history is not contaminated with blood. Rather, the history of Christianity is such that God, our God, that brought us in and grafted us into this tree of Abraham, he was the one who shed his blood for the sake of forgiving us and redeeming us for all the blood that all our grandparents have shed in their various tribes and nationalities and nations. We needed forgiveness, and that forgiveness has to be on the level of a blood. Why? Because every tribe before Christ came were killing their children. So for you to accuse, or anybody, atheists, to accuse the Jewish people of killing people in the Bible, then they have to present to us argument that there was any nation that killed less people. Because even the killings that you see in the Bible is not compared to the killings you see in the Quran. And in the killings you see in the Bible is not compared to the killings you see in the history of the Chinese people. All nations were bathing in blood. The one you see in the Bible is one of the most conservative ones. But that is even with the Jewish people. But even so, it is the same God. But everything was leading to the path and to the time when God could say, the days of ignorance are past. When God could say, every one of you nations that were killing yourself in blood, let me now send the blood of my son that will forgive and redeem all of you. So that all of you now, your past will be washed. Both you who are accusing the God of the Jews for killing people, you are killing people too. You too will be forgiven. And the Jews also who are killing other people, and people, they will be forgiven. And the people who are killed too, who are killing other people, will also be forgiven because of the blood of Jesus. It's a new era. It's a new dispensation. That's why Jesus portrayed a different image of God. Because nobody ever saw God. And he came to reveal the totality of God. But the God that we see in the New Testament, it is the reality of the then fallen nature of man and world in general. It is just because it was well documented and recorded that we could judge them. If every other tribe had also been documented like that, the judgment would have been horrible. But when Jesus came, the bloodshed stopped in Europe. When Jesus entered into China, the bloodshed stopped. When Jesus entered into Africa, the bloodshed stopped. He has shed his own blood one time so that all bloodshed will stop and all nations will be united to their maker through the Abraham, the man that was chosen by God.
Okay, that's really, 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 I'm always impressed with your narrative. You always come up with something different, something new, something different from what I've heard. From the explanation you just gave now, it's really, really interesting, because I observed that in three accounts in the Bible, God, in the account in the Bible, he always favored the second child. For instance, in the case of Ishmael, Cain and Abel, he favored the second child. And then when you come to the case of Jacob and Esau, you see that the second child is actually favored. You come to the case of Ishmael and Isaac, you see that the second child is also favored in this different account. And but
in the case of Mary and Joseph, Jesus, the first child was favored.
Okay, that's interesting. And you also say something about the Arabs, because it's interesting to see that you know these things, because the Arabs, they know it very well. They claim it fully that they are the direct descendant of Ishmael. And it's also interesting to see that Abraham, the blessings he placed on Ishmael was that he will end his life through bow and arrow, and that he will trample upon that his enemy will be under his feet. So I was wondering if this explained the violent nature of the Arabs currently. They are going through, because that was the blessing that Abraham actually placed on Ishmael, and then he blessed Isaac and said that your seed shall inherit. He said, you will be father of nations. He just placed that blessings on. So he placed blessings on two different children, which if you look currently, you will see that these specific children, the same Islam and Christianity, you will see that blessings is manifested in different way. You will see that the Muslims are aggressive, they are violent in their way, because that was the blessing that Abraham placed upon Ishmael, which one cannot argue against that. You also see that Isaac, you will see that it came out differently. So it's actually interesting to see that you know this perspective, you understand how this thing works. So the question still remains. It's still fascinating what you explain, how God, I guess, will never get to understand why he chose to reveal himself in such a manner, to reveal himself through a group of people using Abraham, trying to create a new covenant with humans. It's really interesting. I guess we'll have to take it that way, as you just said, or keep on debating on it until, I don't know, because I was wondering, why didn't it just appear somewhere in the cloud, some kind of powerful force? But no, it has to come through literature, it has to come through a book.
No, that is another question.
Okay.
If we have to find out why is it that God didn't just appear in the cloud, that would be an experience. God was very particular about oration about written versus oration. When God appeared to Moses for him to record the first 5 books of the Bible, he told him to write this down. In every other culture, by that time, the written tradition was not to even record history. Even some of them, like the Arab tradition, had written tradition. Yeah, some form of alphabet. Eastern, not Arab, Eastern tradition. Then the Chinese tradition had some kind of written culture. The Indians, some part of Indians had some kind of written culture. But they were not writing like for history sake and for preservation's sake, but it was there. But when you look at the way God instructed Moses to write down the history of what happened, the history of creation and everything, you will discover that in most of the other cultures, it was mainly oratory narration, oral narration of history. Now, oral narration of history is prevalent all over the world. But what happens with oral narration of history is that it is easily forgotten when somebody is dead. So if God would have appeared like that, people who experience that, they would die. Then when the people, they tell the story, everybody, if you tell 4 people's story, they would all have different narration of it. Narration is a weaker way of preservation of history than written. So that is why God has to start with one lineage and get to a place where it could be written and recorded that in written form. And that's why when we talk about Christianity right now and the history of the Jewish people, it's one of the most systemized and organically structured written. They have the most, Christianity, for example, New Testament, it has some of the most structured manuscript. The 7,000 manuscripts are there. They are the oldest. They are the most widespread manuscript in history of any ancient writing now. Why? Because of you know, God didn't want the connection to Abraham to be oratory. He wanted it to be written.
I guess the question
was, and he doesn't want it to be emotional. He wanted it to be systemic. That's why he said, I am sure that he will teach his children the ways of the Lord. I am sure. I choose it because I am sure he will teach his children the ways of the Lord. That is system. That is predictability. That is eventuality. But if it's just emotions and, you know, wonder, signs,